Back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Peter Geiger is joining us on Zoom from Maine. He's the editor of the Farmers Almanac. The 2023 edition for the year of that is out now. And by the way, Peter, real quick, and we've got a phone call we want to get to. The Farmers Almanac's available where? What is it? I think $7.99. You can order it by mail. You can go. It's sold in a lot of bookstores.
Yeah, it's in the Tractor Supplies. Any place you'll see magazines, you'll find the Farmers Almanac. But you bring up a good point, too. You have the book in your hand, but there's also on our website, farmersalmanac.com, on the top of it, there's an all-access membership. So it's $7.99 for the Almanac, but for $13.99, you get a year's worth of information on the website, plus an almanac, free almanac that goes with it. And that is just going crazy with people signing up for the membership. Yeah, so we're in stores everywhere. Just keep in mind it's the orange and green edition, and the book is great. But nowadays you're going to have a lot more information. So we have a free newsletter that comes out every Wednesday morning. We have social media websites. We have videos. You can go online and search almost anything, including raising chickens and any of that kind of stuff. We have information to help people. And I'd love to hear from people. In fact, when I was in your studio about 20 years ago, somebody called in about with chocolate sauerkraut cake recipe, which got me so excited that I'd had a national dessert contest, and I was giving a speech as to why chocolate sauerkraut cake was the all-American dessert. And I was slamming cheesecake for the filthy rich calories, and I was slamming everybody, and I got 11 votes. I didn't win, but I was saying, what's more all-American than cabbage, which is what sauerkraut really is.
That is so awesome you mentioned it, because that was one of our favorites. Winona Lurie, who has since passed away, just love her, and she brought us one of those cakes. And like a lot of people, you knew about it, I knew about it. It didn't get a lot of votes in that because people hear it and go, oh, that sounds awful. And it's great. You don't taste sauerkraut, obviously. It makes the cake moist, and it is terrific. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
I did it for a local TV station, too, and they didn't know what they were eating until after they took a bite.
It's like, hey, that's pretty darn good. By the way, real quick before we get to this call, as you said, it's available here. Does the Almanac have readers outside this country?
Oh, sure. Oh, we have a lot of readers. I mean, I get calls from the BBC. I get mail from, actually, I have a recipe contest in the Almanac. And this last year it was on honey. This was the winning recipe. It was cookies. And what I didn't realize, and honey was the ingredient, that this particular submission came from a sixth grader in Maryland until I saw a video of the TV station interviewing him about his thing. And this little kid has started his own little bakery and his own recipes. And so this honey recipe, we had the cookies, we had a salad, and we had a chicken recipe. So you literally had a honey of a meal. It doesn't work out that way, but we had 150 recipes. I go to my local culinary art high school, and they narrow it down and we judge it, and it's just amazing how much fun that is. So this coming year, it's blueberry. So anybody in your audience that has blueberry recipes, go online, farmersalmanac.com, and you can submit your recipe. And
I love it. I'm looking at that recipe right now. It's honey churro cookies. First place, $250 winner, which is good with the ingredients in there. Boy, those look good. I could go for one of those right now. Hey, let's take a phone call or two. Let's take a call here from Ann. Ann, good morning. How are you, Ann?
I'm good.
Good.
And you're hearing it first for me. Nick has a habit of saying I'm a smart cookie, but I'm really dumber than dirt.
Nah.
And I have trouble reading the Farmer's Almanac, so I think you just answered my question. For $13.95, I can go online and get my questions answered. But last year, I had a bumper crop of cucumbers, and so this year I planted less. And guess what? I didn't get very many. And this year I wanted more green beans, so I planted more. And I have a bumper crop of some cranberry beans that I planted 2 years ago, but didn't plant any of this year. So I'm tired. I generally hit and miss, and I'm happy with that method. But this year, I've had a lot of illness in the family, and next year, I want to know what the heck I'm growing. So,
there's a gardening.
Yeah.
30 seconds or less, an easier way to determine how to read the almanac to know what crops will or won't grow this season. Because for the basics, the tomato or the cucumber, those plants, that's what I want to hone in on. My husband's family were long-term sharecroppers and farmers, and they relied on that almanac. So I know there's an easier way that this dingbat could read that almanac. But I have trouble with it, and I know that it's accurate. I know farmers relied on it. I just have trouble with it.
Okay, listen, go ahead. It is the Farmer's Almanac. She wants tips on gardening, and we're talking about stuff other than, we know certain times of year you're supposed to plant certain seeds, but what we want is the inside scoop from the Almanac on how maybe she can better approach her garden next year.
Well, two things. Number one, I'm glad she mentioned she had trouble reading it. Allison, who's my designer, redesigned the whole inside of the almanac, and particularly the charts and the graphs, so that they're more reader friendly, easier to read. You can go online and get the information too, and also there's a gardening calendar in here. So if you're going to plant something, look at the gardening calendar for the dates, and then plan according to that. And people tell me it works very well. So I can't get into all the specifics. There's an interesting, we had a newsletter this week, an interesting newsletter that talked about what do you do with all the things that you've grown, and how do you keep them, and where do you store them? Did they go in the refrigerator, go on the counter, you wash them beforehand or not? And so there's a really great article about 15 vegetables and fruits and what you do with them once you've got them. And it also taking them home from the supermarket. I mean, I tend, like, for example, strawberries, I wash them and cut them up. Well, what you're supposed to do is leave it unwashed on a counter for so many days, and it will be better than washing them in advance. So there's a lot of great information, and there is that all access membership, which I think would solve some of the problems if you have problems reading it.
You know, we went to the break and we were talking about eggs. I just got to ask you now about, again, trying to save money. You find something on sale, some of these perishables, and you're like, gee, I wish I could buy a bunch of them now at this price and have them down the road, but they'll go bad. I can't keep them that long. So, you know, eggs last for a good amount of time in the fridge, but you know, if we're talking even longer than that, what's your recommendation on freezing these types of things?
Well, first of all, there's an example of trying to help people get more out of the money they spend. So if you go to the store, you might spend $5 for a dozen eggs now, which before you spent $1.99. So what happens is you take a muffin tin like this, and you crack an egg, and put it into the pin, and it's in each of these pockets, and then you let it freeze, and then you pop it out and put it into a freezer bag, and maybe you do a dozen of them, put them in a bag, and then it will keep there for a year. And then you just pull them out, let it thaw, and there you've got your egg. So if you can find a sale, it's a great way to do it. So in the case of the egg, it keeps for up to a year. Cheeses, if they're cheeses like Swiss cheese and mozzarella cheese, and the harder cheeses, you can freeze them for 6 to 7 months. Milk is an interesting one because I'm single, and so inevitably, and I always eat out, and inevitably I have this milk, and when it gets to the date, apparently you have a few more days beyond the date that they say it goes bad. But you can take milk and freeze it, put it in the freezer as long as there's room to expand, so not a full container, and it will keep for 3 to 6 months, and you should use it within a few days of thawing. But there's a way to take milk and actually extend its life. Same thing with butter. You just put butter in the freezer, and it keeps between 5 and 9 months, depending whether it's salted, and so forth. So we have an article that talks about all these things that can be frozen, freezed, if you will, and that's just another way of helping people get more for their dollars, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's it's interesting. Not that I don't mind buying another bag of onions, but I had this very thing happen to me, and I was looking why you shouldn't throw away onions with black mold on them. All right, now I'm thinking, all right, and black mold, I don't want it. If it's there, I'm going to toss it. And usually it's on the onion skin on the outside. I suppose you could cut into it. So that there's no problem with that?
No. Yeah, I'm trying to find that article. But
yeah, it's on page 33. It's on page 33.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what you do is you just cut the black mold off, and as long as the onion still is firm, it's still going to be good. The same is true of potatoes. When you have the sprouts that are popping up, you can cut those things off. You know, as soon as something looks bad, doesn't mean it is bad. It's a great article about what you can do and how you can extend the life of those things. And so that is a very interesting point. I'm really glad that Ann called in too with her concerns, A, about reading it, and B, don't forget that there's a gardening calendar that you can look at and tells you when to plant certain kind of crops. And by the way, speaking of onions, if you take an onion and you cut it in half, and because we'll be barbecuing over the Labor Day weekend.
Sure.
So I cook at a shelter, so when I go to barbecue, it's all dunkied up. So you heat the grill, let it get hot. You take the onion, stick a big fork in it, and you go along the grates, and it clears it right up.
You mean, all right, so the grate, it's dirty. So you're saying you cut the onion in half and just go like this along the grate, and it'll, as opposed to one of those brushes that you would use maybe?
Instead of the brushes, instead of the sprays, you just take an onion, and
now,
there you go.
Let me ask you that. Would the oil from the onion, and I wouldn't mind this, but would it impart an onion taste to the steak you cook on it?
Negative.
How about that? See, this is the good stuff, my friend. All right, we'll get back to the eggs. Get back to go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you anti-onion?
No, I like onion. I would say I wouldn't have a problem with it, but someone maybe doesn't like the taste of onion, maybe showing up on their grilled salmon. I don't know. But it burns away.
Yeah, it burns.
Getting back to the eggs, this is another little tidbit. I think we've all come across this one time or another. You'll crack an egg and you'll find a red spot in there. And I remember the first time I saw it, it kind of freaked me out. I'm like, oh, was this fertilized? What's this all about? And you've got a section on that, blood in your egg, which basically it's not unhealthy. It's maybe a burst capillary or something. It's not that it was fertilized, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so there's no problem eating it. I mean, I haven't really seen that myself in eggs, but if that's the case, you can still eat it. It's just fine. Yeah. But, I think last year or the year before we had stories about, all the food that gets thrown away just because it doesn't look pretty or it's got a blotch on it. And it's unfortunate because it's still very good. We're throwing away billions of pounds.
You know what? Top of the list on that, and we'll go to the break on this. In the past, you've had some stories in here about bees. You do have a story in here about honey, and that you're right on it. Crystallized honey. I'm a beekeeper, and I get calls all the time. Nick, my honey went bad. It's up on the shelf there, and it's crystallized. Oh, I'm going to throw it away. And I go, don't do it. First of all, good honey right now is very expensive, but you go ahead and you can fill in on this. Crystallized honey can be rejuvenated. Do not throw it away. It's perfectly fine.
Exactly. So if you got that page, why don't you?
Then I will as we go to the break. Let me just tell you, I know this. Crystallized honey, it's just the moisture level got higher in there than maybe some other honey. It'll look crystallized, it's thick, and you're like, what? Take it. Put it in a double boiler with some warm water, slowly stir it as it heats up, and as it heats up, it will turn right back to the beautiful golden honey, and it'll stay that way. Eventually, it'll crystallize again. You can do it again if you don't eat it all. But I've had more people say they threw away a jar of crystallized honey because they thought it went bad, and it's perfectly fine. And with good honey, you don't want to throw it away because it's expensive these days, especially the natural stuff.
And honey is the only food that doesn't spoil.
That's exactly right. Unless it's contaminated. They have found honey in the pharaoh's tombs from centuries ago in these jars, and it is still edible because it never, ever goes bad. Honey is one of the most amazing and wonderful foods there is on a lot of levels. Listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we can take some more phone calls, and we're going to go through some more of these interesting facts and the like, tips on gardening. We already got some of that. I'll have Peter maybe talk to us about some of the more unusual things he's come across in his career as editor with the Farmers Almanac. Back right after this.